I've got a story of addiction, and my addiction was not the good kind of addiction. I was battling alcoholism, and what I found was our people became addicted to our homegrown game in the most healthy way possible.
Yeah.
And at some point, it just hit me like this is actually a great way to connect people in a physical setting where they put their phone down. Anybody can play, like grandmothers can play grandkids. And I realized there's nothing else like that. There's no other game. If you look at spike ball or, badminton, doesn't matter what it is, like there is some impediment to somebody playing it. And there's no impediment to anyone playing and having fun with pepper pong. So I felt like it needed to be in more hands. And so we ended up commercializing it.
Welcome to another episode of Everything Intellectual Property. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has created a new and improved ping pong game where any surface is a center court. Please help me welcome the founder and the CEO of Pepper Pong, Tom Filipini. How is it going, Tom?
Never better, Dave. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
definitely. And I appreciate you giving me some time here this afternoon, kind of to really talk through your story. It's a phenomenal one, so I'm definitely excited to get off into it. And I think the audience will kind of get a lot out of this. One of the things that I kind of like to do at the beginning is have the guests kind of describe their product, just in case maybe whether you listening to this on the audio or the video side of things, we have an idea of what it is that you have invented.
Yeah. Yeah. So Pepper Pong is a reimagination of a great game called ping pong. And, basically we set out, sort of not really ever intending to have a commercialized product, but we set out to solve a lot of the deficiencies of ping pong because ping pong at its core is a lot of fun, but it's got a lot of blemishes. Like you need a huge table. It's really hard for people to learn how to play. If one player's great and the other one's not so great, the points are really short and somebody gets blown out. So yeah, we've got a new game that has a whole different set of equipment, but the premise is that you can play it on any surface, fits in the size of a bag, the size of your shoe bag, and it levels the playing field. So no matter what skill level, what age you are, you're going to have a riveting match on your first try.
No, and I guess as you were explaining things, I was trying to kind of pull your website up just so people can have an understanding of what that looks like. I think I just have it here, which is pretty cool, and it's kind of showing a lot of different uses here. You see it played on the side of a pool, on a table. I think it was on a trunk. So it's a lot of different cool uses. Seems like that's an airport there, so that's pretty cool. But I guess I didn't realize you talked about it not being you didn't look to come out with a commercial product. It just evolved that way. That's interesting because I thought maybe the goal was always to have a commercial product, but maybe that's not the case.
No, and I think a lot of great things start out as something you're just toying around with, and you find a use for it. And that was the case with Pepper Pong. There were inspirations of this game long ago. There was a game called Nerf Pong that they stopped making in the 1980s. And then there was ping pong itself, and then there was pickleball, but none of those really, it was our own game. We happened to take the components and commercialize it really only in 2023. So it's pretty new.
Yeah. So what was that thing that said, okay, we got to get this in the hands of the people? Was it a lot of people asking, how can they purchase it? Seems like that happens quite often. What was that kind of final straw to say, hey, we have to get this out?
I've got a story of addiction, and my addiction was not the good kind of addiction. I was battling alcoholism, and what I found was our people became addicted to our homegrown game in the most healthy way possible.
Yeah.
And at some point, it just hit me like this is actually a great way to connect people in a physical setting where they put their phone down. Anybody can play, like grandmothers can play grandkids. And I realized there's nothing else like that. There's no other game. If you look at spike ball or, badminton, doesn't matter what it is, like there is some impediment to somebody playing it. And there's no impediment to anyone playing and having fun with pepper pong. So I felt like it needed to be in more hands. And so we ended up commercializing it.
No, and I love that. Like you said, a lot of the games, and again, I think I'm from that last era where I kind of grew up without a phone. I didn't have a phone kind of really until maybe high school, whereas now kids growing up and they're kind of on their phone and technology is kind of Right.
Yeah,
Back
Apple
then.
made one for pre-birth. They come out and it's on their wrist.
Right. And kind of back in my day, at least, like I said, I think I was the last generation where hey, just was home before the street light, summertime, you go out all day and play with your friends, football and basketball and whatever the case may be, baseball. And then, like I said, you come back home and watch some cartoons or whatever the case may be before bed. But nowadays, that's not the case. And like you said, the great thing about a pepper pong is the fact that, hey, you can set this thing up everywhere. And we all know with ping pong, it's kind of this big table and spike ball. Some of those other games you talked about, you need a large area to be able to kind of play the game in or play the game on. But with pepper pong, you can set this thing up on a table, on a trunk, whatever the case may be, and get to going, which which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it's this. This is the size of the bag here, so everything you need is in this bag. So, yeah, and the cool thing about it is we invented our own peppers, our version of balls, and the key thing here is that these are foam material, so they move slowly. They're dead silent, but really the materials, and each one is a little bit of a different. Like this one's spicier. It's firmer. So this one moves faster, but it also cuts through the wind. So you can be in like 25-mile-an-hour winds and still play it.
Wow.
But really, the secret invention is the spiciness of the ball. So it slows everything down, and anybody can learn it on their first try.
Yep.
And what it means for experts is that the points never end. Like we'll have. I watched a video the other day of us playing, and there was a 62 shot rally before the
Really?
point ended. Yeah. And it wasn't like we were just hitting it back and forth. We were trying to win the
Yeah.
point. And literally it just was like, yeah, we were just getting it back. And it was so fun.
No, and these are one of those things where I think you said even on Shark Tank, which we'll get to here in a little bit, where ping pong was invented maybe in the 1800s. Were you surprised that not a lot of development has gone on? I think you talked about Nerf pong, but not a lot of development has gone on to try to improve or update ping pong over the last couple hundred years. Were you surprised of that once you really got off into it?
Yeah, I was surprised. And I said it on Shark Tank. I said, I think ping pong was invented a century before sliced bread. So, so anyway, that tells you how old it is. And it really hasn't evolved, and it took a long time. It was not it was not a novel thing to invent. I mean, the balls that you look at, the peppers that we invented, we went through, I don't know, over 120 different prototypes of the balls themselves.
Really?
Yeah.
So no, yeah, and I was going to ask, even with the name Pepper Pong, it seems like obviously ping pong, so it's a play off the ping pong, but the Pepper Pong, that kind of pepper plays off of kind of the spices and the balls. Where did that whole thing come from? With kind of labeling the different balls based off kind of the spiciness, so to speak, and then having pepper and the name Pepper Pong. Where did that come from?
Well, I always, when I first invented it, I wanted us to have 3 different levels. So I wanted there one to be that was lower bounce, medium bounce, higher bounce. And I was literally sitting at my desk one day and I was like, the name is Pepper Pong and these are spices. And that's literally, and I ran it by a few of my mentors. They're like, that's the name. That's a great name.
I love that name. I love that name.
Thank you. And then we've embraced it, keep it spicy. And, there's a lot of smack talking involved in our game. So spicy talk and, we have fun with it. The whole thing is meant to be fun. Like,
right.
Some games get too competitive and there's leagues and there's tournaments and our game is tongue in cheek. Just talk smack to your buddy, talk smack to your grandma, have your grandma talk smack back to you.
Yep.
That's what our game's about.
No, and let me ask you this, because that's interesting. Again, I'm a competitive person. If there's one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to compete, play football all the way up to undergrad at Michigan State University. So I'm a competitive person. With the kind of ascension of racquetball, has that kind of helped Pepper Pong out as it relates to kind of people wanting this kind of different game outside of like ping pong in terms of it being in a racket sports? Has that helped out Pepper Pong? Have you seen any kind of going?
The rise of pickleball?
Yeah, has the rise of pickleball helped Pepper Pong at all, or have you seen any kind of difference in that?
Yeah. Well, it's helped us in a lot of ways because a lot of people call Pepper Pong the tabletop cousin of pickleball.
I like that.
And actually, the New York Post wrote a huge feature article on pepper pong, and they called it the next pickleball.
Nice.
And that was a great piece, and a lot of people learned about pepper pong through that exposure.
Yep.
And it certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, it's a good analog. It's sort of like they say that pepper pong is the ping pong of pickleball. And so it does have a lot of similarities in terms of like a very shallow learning curve. Like you can learn to play really quickly, but that doesn't make it any less fun. I'll tell you that much.
Yep. So then with the Olympics, I think coming here the next go around, I think in the US, LA, if I'm not mistaken, and you see all these kind of different sports. I know they have flag football as part of the Olympics. Obviously, I think they have ping pong. Would that be something that I'm not saying necessarily is a goal, but would that be a cool thing to see one year pepper pong as being maybe one of those Olympic events?
It would be. It would be. I've got my own version of an Olympics that I want to invent myself
Nice, nice.
that I'll tell you about on a future episode. How about
Okay.
that?
Okay,
But
no, that
yeah,
sounds
we're
like
having a lot of fun with some of the things that we're planning on in terms of like making it a very quirky kind of like kind of for guys like you and I. I played soccer in college, and it sounds like you played football in college or up till college, and
yep.
we still compete. Like we still want to win, and we want to compete in a different way. And
Yep.
so now I compete in things like pepper pong, and it's a lot of fun.
Nice, nice, nice. What would you say is the craziest place that someone has set up the game of pepper pong to play again? We saw on the website you had the card, you had the table, you had the ground surface, a lot of different places. What is the craziest that maybe you either played or that someone told you, hey man, I set up this the net at this place, and you're like, what, really?
I'll tell you a story. So the craziest place I've personally played is at like 35,000 feet on a commercial airline flight.
How did that work? Did you like set up on the seats or?
Yeah, I had this like folding table that I had intentionally built to travel with, and I was looking at my daughter and I was like, "Wait a second, can we set that up across the aisle?" And I asked the flight attendant if we could play pepper pong, and she said, "Is that a phone game or what is it?" No, I said it's kind of like ping pong. And she says, "Absolutely not." And sure enough, my daughter and I pull it out and we set it up across the aisle. And my other daughter's sitting 2 rows back and she films us playing. So we got some good rallies going across the aisle. And that was pretty wild. It was
Did,
pretty
did, the,
wild.
did, the, did the flight attendant come back around at some point and
She
say,
was
put
way
it
up
up?
at the front. It was when the cabin was dark and like we were able to sneak it in. So
Nice, nice,
yeah, it
nice.
was pretty fun. I mean, man, we've heard of it being played everywhere. Like, we just not crazy places like airline cabin, but like I'll see videos of it being played in front of like the Eiffel Tower and
Wow.
and down in front of the Opera House in Australia. Really, it's exploded. It's only for sale in the US and Canada right now, but it's really the gameplay has exploded worldwide because people travel with it everywhere.
Nice, nice, nice. No, that's good stuff. I was kind of doing some research in preparation for this interview and just kind of looking at your story, aviation innovation company that you founded, founder of an exclusive resort. So it seems like you had this entrepreneurial spirit or kind of background. Was that always the case? Or again, I saw that you got the degree in economics from Bucknell, which is kind of maybe different from the entrepreneur. So did you always at some point say, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur and just work for myself as opposed to working in corporate America, or that they just kind of happen?
Yeah, I started out in corporate America. I worked for Accenture as my first job out of the gates,
Yeah.
and then I worked for a small investment banking firm. But really, ultimately, I think I was wired to do this. I started my first business at the age of 25, and I haven't looked back since then. So
Nice.
I am firmly unemployable at this point. I think.
I like that. I'm unemployed. I'm gonna take that one from you. I'm firmly unemployable. I like that one. And this is interesting because again, another part I was telling you offline that part of me doing this podcast is really inform and give back, teaching people about intellectual property and kind of really entrepreneurship as well. And again, these days it's totally different from say 30, 40, 50 years ago where you wrote it out at a company for 30 years and I guess went off into the sunset with your pension or whatever the case may be. It seems like these days people get laid off left and right, and a job is anything but like a stable thing where you can kind of count on for the next 30 years. And I think entrepreneurship or just having something else going on is more important than ever. Do you think that anybody to some level, again, they don't have to be the next Steve Jobs or, uh, you know,
Mark Zuckerberg
yeah,
or whoever.
or Elon Musk or whatever the case may be, but just to have something going on, just just for maybe a rainy day, or just to kind of do something else that's maybe aside from what they're doing with their day job. Do you think that everybody should kind of dip their toe in entrepreneurship in some form or
Yeah,
fashion?
I've got an interesting take on that right now, and I've got some interesting things on the IP side that I'm happy to chat with you about.
Yeah.
That tie in Spikeball and Chris Reuter, who's the CEO of Spikeball's advice to me regarding IP when we were just getting Pepper Pong going. But I'll tell you one thing right now. With AI, there is literally zero impediment to becoming an entrepreneur. In fact, what's happened literally in the last 6 months, I've observed this in real time, and I tell my kids this, is that we have transitioned from a very technical, high barrier to entry world of entrepreneurship where you had to rely on technical skills like programming or design or into a creative world where the creatives, basically any idea you can come up with virtually, if not now, within the next year, you can bring any idea to life. And for very little money. So we basically opened the floodgates to entrepreneurship, and people are only limited by their creativity at this point.
I like that. I like that. And then even kind of back in the day with having to be in a big box retailer such as a Sam's Club or a Costco, these days with e-commerce platforms, that also is making it a lot easier as well. What did you say?
Yeah, and you can have fun doing it. I mean, you can sell on TikTok. Like they built a shop into TikTok. Like literally, if a day on the internet, learning some AI, learning some different things, watching YouTube videos, watching YouTube University, as I call it, literally there is such a wealth of information there, and the tools that are coming out, especially with Google and its Gemini AI stuff being free. Like if you want to build an app, you can have an app built by this afternoon. And I don't want to like minimize the fact that literally, I mean, you can have an app built this afternoon. It's become that ubiquitous and that easy.
Wow. 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 So then again, I know you talked about IP, and I think this is a perfect time to kind of move into IP. It seems like Spikeball, the founder, kind of gave you maybe your first crash course, a lesson in IP, but it seems like, again, you are an entrepreneur at heart and have founded a number of different companies. So what was your again, a lot of people have these crash courses where they're learning on the job, and unfortunately they kind of learn the hard way as it relates to IP and protecting IP, whether it's patents or trademarks or copyright, so forth and so on. Did you know about IP already because of your previous businesses, or was Pepper Pong another introduction to IP that was kind of went beyond your prior understanding?
I've had some interaction with IP in the past. So you mentioned exclusive resorts. We had a very successful travel company that was backed and eventually acquired by Steve Case, who was the founder of AOL. And that was the company that I started in my late 20s, call it. And so I had very fortunate opportunity to work with Steve Case and the board of directors that he put together. So very sophisticated business leaders. And as we were announcing Steve's involvement, somebody had actually purchased our domain name. And so they bought we were running under exclusiveresortsllc.com for the beginning because we couldn't buy exclusive resorts. We didn't know who had bought it because of the whois privacy. And sure enough, we were featured on CNBC and the Wall Street Journal on the front page. And that day they put up their website on our URL, exclusive resorts, to get the traffic. And so we had to go deal with all the IP and the letters and all that stuff to get our domain name back. And, we ended up, I think we paid them to do that. So that was a good example of like IP protection and making sure you own all the assets related to the name of your business and all that good stuff.
Yep.
And then there was the story that Chris Reuter told me, which is in Europe, they didn't trademark the name Spikeball. And so they actually, as they were getting traction and they were on Shark Tank, somebody actually started marketing a game called Spikeball which is a direct copy of Chris's game over in Europe, and he had to pay a couple $1 million, as I'm told or I heard, to get that name. Or I don't know how much money. I honestly don't know the number, but it was a pain in the butt to deal with.
No,
So
for sure.
what I would say to aspiring entrepreneurs is, whatever the name is that you come up with, or if you have a novel design, invest at least a little bit of money to do the research. Make sure you're not stepping on somebody else's IP, but also making sure that your IP is protectable so somebody doesn't come down the road against you down the road. And last thing on that subject is Chris advised, he said, you can do all the work up front and you could still run into problems, people taking your name, taking your idea, having your game copycatted. So one thing you can do is to build a brand. And that's why I wear this stupid suit all the time, because we're building a brand.
And again, that's what it's become. Definitely building a brand. And the good thing about branding is, you can have a number of different names. Pepper Pong, you can have the spicy, the names of the balls that can be trademarked. You think of like a company like McDonald's and all the kind of brand names that they have, whether it's McFlurry, the McNuggets, the Golden Arches. They just have a number of different trademarks and brand names that resonate with people.
Yeah, don't forget the McRib though. That's a great.
So you like that McRib? I haven't tried the McRib. I know it's kind of in and out on the menu, but a lot of people say the McRib is good.
McRibs and Shamrock shakes, man.
I can get with you on that Shamrock shake. I love a good Shamrock shake. I can't tell you that. So that's branding, which always kind of classifies it like a trademark. When you think of branding names, whether it's a logo, whether it's a short phrase, whether it's a word. But then in your case, it seems like you also have a utility patent on the game as well. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what went into say, okay, let me protect the game via a patent as well, not just kind of Pepper Pong and protecting the names via a trademark?
Yeah, we did go down that path, and we did get issued a patent for the game itself. And I think, you got to think of these things as deterrents as well, right? And so, it's not all about necessarily enforcing patents and going after everybody that loosely violates whatever IP that they're violating, because you also have to be ready to engage international attorneys if they're doing it in another country, and
Sure.
That can get expensive. So I think there's an element of deterrence and erecting some barriers to entry by having trademarks and having some patents out there, and just saying, hey, look, like don't go think of your own thing. Don't directly copy what we're doing, right? And that's part of it too.
No, yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with you. I think having those deterrents or having those patents and things like that, trademarks, is a good deterrent. Also, I interviewed Megan Wolfgram with Swift Paws, and I think she was on season 15 of Shark Tank, and I was at the Shark Tank reunion tour, reunion conference in January, which was in Tampa. It was kind of rescheduling of the October conference because of the hurricane, so they rescheduled it for January in Tampa. And I had kind of reconnected with her, and she said, hey, someone was infringing her patent on her. It's like a dog lure course, but they were making it for cats. So it was more so indoors, whereas hers was for outdoors. Theirs was the infringers were for cats, whereas hers was for dogs. And it was like a pretty good quality. But again, they were infringing, but they were able to kind of work out a deal where they had to pay her. They licensed essentially the rights to be able to use the invention, the patent for cats in exchange for now she's collecting an additional revenue source, that being a royalty because she has the patent. So I think that's another good outcome of being able to protect your IP. And when somebody infringes, and you talked about the whole deterrent thing, but it can also kind of act as, okay, I don't want to sue you, but let's get a license, let's kind of pay me a royalty, and now you're generating an additional revenue source.
Yeah. And I think about that a lot. I actually think about the game of pickleball, which ironically was invented, so to speak, in the 1960s in this guy's backyard.
Wow.
Yeah, read the origin story of pickleball. It's pretty fascinating. It was made with similar to how we sort of made this as a homegrown game with components that were, the fundamentals of the game haven't changed, but the actual equipment, has changed as we've developed it over time. But those guys invented a game that now is, the fastest growing sport in America in the 60s, but they did nothing to protect it. Zero.
Wow.
And so the governing bodies of pickleball, these other people have, now that it's gained a lot of traction during COVID, everybody else is monetizing their invention. And it's just a fascinating story, because now you have like Wilson and Selkirk and Eula and all these different brands that are monetizing something that they had nothing to do with creating in the beginning. Right. And so a lot of sports are that way. And so IP has been central to what we've built from the beginning. Is like, sure, we'd love to have other people make rackets at some point, but we want to set it up in a way where it's not like somebody else could just take our game and then go monetize it themselves without our involvement.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's the whole point of it. I mean, I go back and forth with people all the time, because some people don't think, or they think IP, having IP kind of limits the free market or whatever the case may be. And I just disagree with that. You're never going to convince me that kind of you doing all the work. You talked about 120 iterations of the balls, and you going through all that time and money, and then for somebody just to be able to kind of copy it freely. And I just don't think I don't think that benefits anybody, for someone to go through all the research and development of something, then for somebody else to be able to just kind of take it off a whim without no repercussions. I just think that stifles innovation at that point, at least in my opinion.
It would stifle innovation. I can tell you firsthand, like if there was no way for me to protect in some way my ability to at least recoup my investment in R&D, I wouldn't do it in the first place.
Nobody
So that's
would. Exactly.
innovation.
Yep, for sure. Nobody would. Now, whether or not you want to argue 20 years as opposed to 15, whatever the case may be, okay, that's a timing. But to say it should be 5, 6, I don't know. I think things are good the way they are in terms of the 20-year protection time. And yeah, for sure. So then let me ask you this. So kind of with the whole Shark Tank, and maybe kind of moving along with the Shark Tank, what was that uh, that thought to say, okay, I need to get this thing on Shark Tank and really blow it to the masses? I've kind of run a gamut with having a lot of Shark Tank businesses on. Some people have applied 20, 30 times before they got on. Some people, the producers of Shark Tank, saw them at a trade show or something like that and told them to apply. So what was your experience to say, okay, I need to get on Shark Tank? And then did you apply a couple times, or did the producer seek you out to tell you to apply?
I got a call last March. I never applied, never planned on applying, to be honest with you, because I've heard the hit rate is so low. And I do have friends that have applied multiple times and haven't succeeded in getting on. I've got friends that have gotten to the goal line and they didn't even get the chance to film. And so the advice to me was, see if they call someday. And they called about a year into our business, which, I'm just so grateful that they called. And they kind of fast tracked our application process and gave us about a month and a half to get ready to go film.
Wow.
And so it was a quick turnaround. And honestly, I do not know how they heard about it. And they claim not to remember how they heard about it. But as soon as we sent them their sample sets, they became raving fans. Yeah. So I just know that I was on a Zoom call with one of the head honchos, and his daughter came on the Zoom call. This is like a prep Zoom call to like get ready for the film date. And his daughter comes on and she goes, I love Pepper Pong. And then she jumps out of the window and he's like, yeah, we play every night. So I think our game's pretty lovable when you play it. And we had the fortune of somehow the sets got into the right hands and they ended up really enjoying it, which is great.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like that's definitely a first, to not apply, to kind of really not be out there, so to speak, for them to kind of see the game and whatnot, and then being only in business for a year. I know a lot of times when people go on Shark Tank, one of the things that the sharks say is, oh, well, you guys are too early in the process to kind of get investors and whatever the case may be. But it seems like it worked out for you. So then, I guess, going on the show, and obviously it seems like it came down to Todd, the guest shark, as well as Damon. Were those the two sharks that you sought out beforehand? I know they don't tell you guys who's going to be on there until maybe a week or so before the show. So were those two that you identified as being a potential, people or sharks that you wanted to do a deal with, or it just kind of how it worked out?
Yeah, I think, I was open to, all kinds of, different sharks. I mean, obviously Damon with his background in sports and whatnot, obviously I thought it would resonate with him. And then, frankly, I thought Cuban would be a little more interested, but I think, interesting about our filming is that we were second to last in our session of filming. So I went out there at like 6 o'clock on a Saturday night, and they were pretty tired at that point. And I hadn't really heard about Raising Cane's, but doing my research, because they do tell you a little bit before which guest shark's going to be on there.
Yeah.
I was absolutely blown away by what Raising Cane's has done from a marketing standpoint and the kind of human being that Todd Graves is.
Yep.
And you never know if that's all true or not. And we ended up doing a deal with Todd, and it's been true to the nth degree. He's just a wonderful guy.
Nice. Hey, man, I was just in Chicago this past weekend and had some Raising Cane's. So, again, I'm in Michigan. I think they just opened one up here in Michigan, not too far where I'm from. But every time I go to Chicago, I try to go to Raising Cane's. They have some great food. I guess I haven't seen what he has done on the marketing side of things, but just kind of hearing how he built up Raising Cane's, that's definitely an inspiration.
You see this behind me here?
Yep.
You see so that's one of the things he did for us without even telling us he was going to do it. He had life-size cutouts of me put into all the stores, not only indoors, but also in all the drive-throughs.
Really?
So the story goes that there's been only 3 of these cutouts put out in mass at Raising Cane's restaurants in the 25-year history of Raising Cane's. The first one was of Todd himself.
Yep.
The second one was of iced tea. And the third one was of spiced tea.
I like that spice. Hey, see, and that's one of the things being an IP attorney, man. Anytime I hear a catchy or a cool name, I'm like, man, somebody should protect that. I like spiced tea.
Spiced tea.
Cool name.
Yeah, that's what Mr. Wonderful was calling me on the show. So it never actually it never made the cut. But yeah, it's pretty funny that Todd's just a creative dude. Like, I didn't even know he was doing it, and he did it. So,
well, and this is one of the things that I did, just kind of looking at the episode. I did the kind of reaction video to it, which I typically do, and then just kind of rewatching that to prepare for this. It was interesting that you had spent the amount of money. I think it was like $500,000 up until that point in time with the Pepper Pong. Maybe can you talk a little bit about that, and then kind of what all went into kind of what all that you had to do to kind of get Pepper Pong off the ground?
Yeah. So, a lot of that money actually went into our first batch of inventory. So,
Okay,
you
I got you.
recoup some of that.
Okay.
But, I'll tell you, creating a physical product that lives in the human realm is a lot more challenging than I ever thought it would be. I sort of went into this thinking, oh my gosh, with e-commerce and whatnot. And I might contradict my earlier statement about, the fact that it's easy to do this stuff now. And I mean that from the standpoint of building websites and helping with the writing and doing social media ads and coding apps and whatnot. But still, like, when you're creating something that you're bringing to life, like, there's just a lot of testing that has to go on.
Yep.
And, like it or not, this kind of stuff is meant to, it's really best manufactured in the Far East, China or Vietnam or something. It's just a lot cheaper. And so then you're dealing with like shipments of test products coming back and forth, and it just all adds up, so, it just depends what you're making. You can do it on a shoestring budget and try to, the big thing is, like, you got to test it. You got to have some sort of our prototypes cost nothing. It's really when you get into the commercialization of the product where, you start to spend money to get it to bring to life. You got designers and you got all kinds of stuff.
I got that. Yeah, and that makes sense. It seems like with the older stuff, with the businesses, that was kind of maybe more so on the software side.
Yep.
Nice.
Software's gotten a lot cheaper with AI. And actually, I mentioned designers, like, you can do a lot of the design work using AI nowadays too. And there's just a lot of tools out there where you can sort of like, you can almost bring your product to life in a virtual realm without spending a lot in the physical realm.
No, that's true. So, again, with the background in economics, how did that work out? Were you kind of self-taught on maybe the software side of things, coding, or did that kind of always come natural to you?
I just, lifelong learner, I guess, is the, like, I find myself, instead of binge watching Netflix, I binge watch YouTube videos on. Right now, my passion is AI. Like, I literally spend so much time just watching because it's changing so fast. And one thing I would sort of advocate for your viewers is to like at least try to get on top of it now and at least have an understanding of the tools that are starting to take shape
Yeah.
as the sort of the baselines of what will become a whole new world of tools that are accessible to them. So don't overlook the fact. Don't think ChatGPT is just some way to write thank you notes or a speech for your buddy's bachelor party or wedding or something like that. It's so much more than that,
Yeah.
and you need to start now getting your head around it, because as soon as you start using it, the world opens up to you and how you can use it in different aspects of your life, whether that's your personal life or your business.
Gotcha. Oh, and that makes perfect sense to me. I did have this written down that I wanted to ask you. It seems like, at least according to Shark Tank, at the time of Shark Tank, you were only really kind of selling this thing on your website as opposed to on Amazon, where kind of seems like a lot of people sell on Amazon, kind of get it out to the masses and being able to sell a lot as relates to units sold or kind of generate revenue. Now, obviously, you got the kind of knockoff that kind of come up at that point as well. Was you did that decision not to sell on Amazon, did that kind of stem from the knockoffs, or was there another reason that went into not wanting to sell on Amazon?
Well, Amazon's much like a traditional retailer in that once somebody buys it, they are the merchant of record and you never get their email address or any of that stuff. And as I told Damon on Shark Tank, like at least at this early stage, and I would still call us early at 2 years old, we want to own that customer relationship, and we want, if people have questions, we want them to ask us, and if they have feedback, we want them to give it to us,
Okay.
just so that we can develop and bring them into the family.
Yeah.
And it's not all about the money, man. It's like, when you invent something that you're really proud of, like you want to make sure that it's rolled out in a way that like does it justice to what your original vision for it was.
Yep.
And that's very much the case with what we're doing at Pepper Pong. And Amazon, you're right though. I'll tell you along the way, like you may know this, but the knockoff guys can basically, if it's not Amazon itself knocking you off, it's one of the other knockoff guys, right? And they've basically developed algorithms based on the number of reviews and the price. Like they know exactly how successful you are.
Yep.
And if you're having success on Amazon, somebody's going to get it like a flag and they're going to be like, let's knock that one off. And
Yep.
so that definitely is part of it. So, we're doing great with sales, and things have been wonderful just on our own website, and we're just going to methodically roll it out, and, we'll see where it goes.
Slow and steady wins the race. I like that. Slow and steady. And again, I think these days, I know you talked a lot about AI and how that can benefit a business. I mean, I just think community is the way to go. And that's what I'm trying to do with kind of my channel and the things that I do, kind of really build out this community of people that, again, like you said, you can have this kind of relationship with, as opposed to kind of going through or not having that relationship or not getting that person's information because it's on a third party site, such as Amazon or whatever the case may be. I think community, man, again, it's going to take a little bit more time, but I think in the long run, it's going to pay off.
Well, let's talk about getting a little discount out to your community, just in the spirit of, we can work on something like that. And, if they're part of your community and they're avid followers of yours, I'd like to reward them just like you're rewarding me by allowing me to be on the show. So let's talk about that after the fact and we'll get something out.
No, for sure, man. I just crossed 3,000 subscribers here on at least YouTube. So, hey, it's coming. It's slow and steady, but I like the way things are going, and I have some cool things in the works to continue to kind of grow that number and build the community. So I guess maybe we all know that business is not like a linear progression where it's just kind of this constant incline. It's more like a sine wave where you have the ups and the downs. And I always like to ask the guests this two-part question. Number one, what was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome up until this point in time with regard to the business? Then on the flip side, what was the biggest breakthrough that you had with the business to kind of keep it going up until this point in time?
Yeah. So I'd say if you fundamentally believe in what you're doing, like you're doing it from like, you're not just doing it to make a buck, like you're doing it, there's got to be a bigger purpose. And, and I think we were rewarded on Shark Tank because I was willing to share a story that I hadn't really shared publicly in front of the world, really. and that took some, took some guts, and it took buy-in from my teenage daughters and my wife to kind of
Mm.
share something that prior to Pepper Pong, very few people knew about, which is that I battled alcoholism for a long time. And people associate alcoholism with, like, a bum under a bridge somewhere with a bottle of vodka and a paper bag. And that's not the case. Like, there's alcoholism everywhere, and there's all kinds of addiction everywhere. And really what I felt, and my daughters and my wife agreed, is like, if you are vulnerable about what your challenges are, other people will be as well, and it'll make the world a better place. And so it felt so good to do that. And by doing that, like, our sales also went up, like, because
Wow.
people are like, wow, if this guy is willing to do that. I mean, we got 3,000 emails after Shark Tank from
Wow.
people. Yeah, and they were like, hey, my daughter is dealing with that, or I just lost my son to alcoholism, or what. It's just, it makes it so much more worth it, irrespective of sales. It makes it so much more worth it if there is a true story behind what you're doing and why you're doing it, not just to make a dollar.
No, and I agree with that, and I will also say it's probably a lot more refreshing. Again, internet, we talked about all is the great things that it's doing, but one of the things, particularly with social media, is kind of people are putting the highlights. It's like a highlight reel to people's
Yeah.
lives. And it's like, no, people are still going through real things. So anytime someone comes out, it can be vulnerable of something that they're going through that in reality more other people are going through as well. I think people can connect to that and people relate to it, and it shows it's kind of refreshing, which, like you said, people can kind of connect with, and you kind of gain a lot more supporters and followers than you would think you would have done by sharing such information.
Yeah, and you nailed it. And it's like this world of Instagram and everything, and it's like, dude, your life is not that perfect. Nobody's life is that perfect. I don't care how much money you have or how fancy your life is. Like, everybody has challenges. Like, if you don't now, you're damn lucky, and you will in the future, right? And so, we're all humans. We're only here for a short period of time. Why not talk about it, man? Like, we all, I think it brings people closer together. And that's what our game is all about, is bringing people closer together in terms of, like, the human connection.
Yep, and I love games who does such a thing where it's like, okay, whether it's holiday events, summertime picnics, whatever the case may be, it's human interaction, human connection, talking, kind of going back and forth, as opposed to just kind of being on some type of electronic device and kind of not communicating or conversing with others around. I think these days, anytime you can have something that has that human touch to it, it's definitely going to be better and make a difference. At least in my opinion.
Yeah,
So
no, for sure. For sure.
nice,
We're aligned in that regard.
exactly, and then even kinda going with that, I know you have the kind of the donation or the giving that you're doing. I know you talked about the whole the alcoholism, and kinda you actually are maybe donating, from my understanding, just kinda checking out the website to the extent that people, are kinda donating to the game to such causes or maybe kind of foundations to kinda help out with, different addictions. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. So what I found was, when I was in my addiction, alcoholism in my case, isolation is really what fueled my addiction. The more I was in this dark hole, I call it. That's the best way to describe it. The more I wanted to just be away from other people and just go do my own thing. And and it just feeds on itself, and it's this downward spiral where, honestly, if I didn't get better, I wouldn't be on this podcast today. I'd
Wow.
be dead.
Wow. Wow.
And it was that bad. And so, basically, what I realized was, like, our game, at the heart of our game, is connection, and I call it isolation's kryptonite. And I just know that it can help somebody with mental health challenges, addiction, what have you, just by standing up and hitting a ball back and forth and having some small conversation. And so we donate sets to recovery centers. Basically, I'm not going to advertise, this widely, that we'll give away free sets, but if somebody, if somebody's struggling and needs a set for their buddy that is dealing with something and thinks that our game can benefit, we'll work something out and we'll get them a set.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, no, I mean, and it's interesting because on one hand, entrepreneurship can be a lonely road in a lot of cases. But it seems like on the flip side of that, it can kind of lead to these other things that you pick up, bad habits, whatever the case may be. So it's kind of like kind of the yin and the yang to it that you have to almost kind of try to find as best as possible a happy middle ground or a medium to kind of operate or work within.
Yeah, and I think that's why, for entrepreneurs, some of these shared office environments have been really successful, and joining mastermind groups or finding you got to find community in some regard, because
Sure.
otherwise you can just sit in front of your computer all day long and just lose yourself and get isolated. And ultimately, especially I think with the advancements in AI, just talking to people and getting out there, seeing what other people are doing is really important.
Yep, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. So then, just last two questions for you, and I think maybe the first one you maybe kind of answered a little bit. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? So, say someone who has this maybe idea that they've been holding on to for a while, whether it's a service or some type of widget or product they want to come out with, but they just haven't gone in. What would you give? What advice would you give to that aspiring entrepreneur?
So for me, it's like I like to I'm a visual person, a visual learner, visual person, whatnot. And honestly, and I hate to keep harping on AI, but like one of the really cool things with AI, especially with the image creation nowadays, is that you can literally describe whatever is in your mind's eye, and it can even be a service. And then all of a sudden it's got like a prototype of a website, and it's like, oh my God, yeah, that's what I had in my mind all these years of what I want to create.
I like that.
Or if it's a product in the physical realm, you can have like a 3D version of it made up, and you can start to like you can see it, like never before. You can see your idea kind of coming to life. And then you can run it by friends and say, hey, this is what I was talking about with that game or that service or that product. Like, you think it's something that you would buy, or what advice would you have? And then ultimately it's like, share it with a few people, right? And share your idea out there. The one thing you should not do is be the guy at the party that's like, oh yeah, someday I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Someday I'm going to invent this stuff. There's too many somedays out there, right? You
Yeah.
know that guy, right? He's always going to invent the next great thing, or he's like, oh, that he stole my idea,
And
right?
I was going to say that was going to be the other one when they see something they like, oh, I invented, or I thought of that, or I invented it, or
I
I
had
had that
that
idea to
idea.
somebody.
Then do
He
it.
never did anything. Yep, yep. I agree with you.
Freaking
That's
do it,
good.
man.
That's
Like,
good.
I applaud you. Like, you're putting yourself out there. And I was also going to say about 3,000 plus followers, kudos to you for that, because that's not easy to achieve. And it doesn't, what's weird is, it like, some people will be like, well, it doesn't seem like a lot. Well, 3,000 of the right followers, and then with organic following. That's why
Yep.
people are like, how are you going to make your game go viral? I was like, I don't want my game to go viral. Viral isn't sticky.
Right.
Viral is a one hit wonder, right? I
Community.
want organic growth. I want people to really, not because they saw a funny video, but because they really enjoy the game,
For
just
sure.
like you're growing because people enjoy the hell out of your podcast for good reason.
Right, right. And the content, and again, it's definitely, like I said, the social media, the different forms. IG is more so pictures or whatever the case may be. I know on YouTube, you have to kind of, hey, turn the camera on. You have to talk to a camera and kind of say something that's interesting and make people want to come back and kind of hit that subscribe button. So, I mean, again, I say YouTube is like the big boy platform in the sense that you have to kind of be entertaining, but maybe informational at the same time, compared to maybe TikTok or Instagram, where you can kind of make some kind of funny skit or just post a picture of you, just kind of in some fake environment. Like YouTube, you have to cut on the camera and kind of talk, and you have to come up, do it again, be consistent at it, and kind of make people want to continue to, hey man, I wonder what David thinks about this or what this person thinks about this, and continue to come back to your content, to your videos. So, and we're
Yeah.
growing it. Like I said, my thing is, hey, just kind of building that community. And if it kind of takes me a while to get to 10 to 15, 20,000, I know I'll get there, and there's no rush, at least on my end. So,
Well, I'll spread the word and help you get there. It's really good content. I've watched a bunch of it, and I really, I appreciate it. And you're right. It's one of the platforms you really have to work at.
yes.
It's like more of like broadcast than
Yep.
than trying to like sit in front of your mirror and put makeup on or something like that.
Oh, for sure. Exactly, exactly. But it's helped me become a better attorney and just kind of a better communicator and orator, or whatever the case may be. So I've definitely picked up some skills that kind of are transferable to my day-to-day job, as well as just kind of life in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so,
Well, I applaud you.
so the last question, and maybe the most important question, is how can people follow you as well as Pepper Pong and purchase the product?
Yeah. So you could buy the product at pepperpong.com.
Okay.
Really, we're only active on Instagram right now, and that's at Play Pepper Pong. And I'm going to get a little more active. I've got some things to share going forward, and I think I'll be most active on Twitter. So Tom Filipini is my handle on Twitter, and it's pretty dormant right now, but I've got a lot of cool stuff I think that I'm working on that I could share, and just a matter of time before I'm out there. But mostly go to pepperpong.com if we want to work on a discount code or something, we can do that. And then check us out on Instagram. There's some funny stuff that we're putting out there now. So
perfect. I was going to say, yeah, definitely. If we can work on that discount code, just so when the interview drops, and I'll definitely make sure all those handles are in the description of the interview so people can go check you out on the different social platforms, and more importantly, go to the website, check things out, purchase the product. Again, summertime is coming up. It's going to be a lot of events, barbecues and picnics and family reunions and all that. So it's definitely worthwhile to get in it as the weather warms up. I know you're in Denver. I'm in Michigan, man. We have to take this summer weather and don't take it for granted, because before you know it, fall and kind of the winter will be upon us before you know it. So we have to enjoy the summer. And hey, to the extent audience that you can enjoy it with playing Pepper Pong, definitely go check out the product and go purchase it. And really, hopefully you guys not only enjoyed the interview, but really took some notes, because Tom, he was able to give a lot of great insight, not only on IP, but really just entrepreneurship and just kind of really overcoming different obstacles. He's overcome a number of different obstacles up until this point in time, and it's definitely it's respectable. So hopefully you guys got something out of this interview. And hey, man, do it. Go be the entrepreneur. Go do it. Don't just be that guy to say I thought about this, or I'm gonna do it at some other time. Actually be that person to say I did this. And I think that's one of the big things that I took away from this interview, is just kind of being somebody that's kind of actionable and kind of about that action, as opposed to somebody who's always saying, hey, I'm going to do it. So hey, I appreciate the time, Tom. Hey, audience, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Again, when this interview comes out, it will be hopefully a discount code for you to go purchase the product. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Until next time, take care.
Thanks, Dave.